Hi guys, welcome to this week's webinar. We are going to be talking about, is the end in sight for Brexit? I'm sure there's many of you who are wondering what's going on with Brexit. Why are we still in pretty much the same position that we were in a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and probably even 2 years ago? And it seems as though we're actually not any further forward. So we're going to run through a couple of bits today. There are obviously so many variables with Brexit. What's happening, what can happen. So what we're saying to everyone is we're going to run through the different variables, some options which we foresee, and what we feel is going to happen. And then, of course, we're going to open it up to you guys at the end to ask any questions. The main angle that we look at this from, obviously, is the property side. We look at seeing how the property market is going to be affected, both local property markets, national, and of course it does affect the international market as well. A lot of people think it doesn't, but when you've got things like, for example, we are heavy buyers in places like France and Spain, so that affects us in regards to, or it affects those countries in regards to two things. First of all is unknown. When things are unknown like we are in at the moment, it affects people in regards to they don't want to buy something in those particular countries. They don't know what the future holds there for expats. And also the exchange rate. The exchange rate's pretty weak. So, whereas, you go back a decade and it was maybe 1.5 euros to the pound, we're now looking at, things around about the 113, 115 mark. Makes a big difference on what you're buying. So it doesn't just affect things nationally, but also internationally. Well, without further ado, let's crack on. So in regards to what the latest news is, well, I'm sure you're all aware, is the latest news is we started to extend, they put an extension on. Now, there's quite a bit of confusion in regards to how long we put the extension on for. So importantly, there are a few variables that we can actually meet here. An actual decision day, so D-Day essentially, is the 31st of October. Now, there's always talk about the fact that it's Halloween. European leaders have come out and they said, look, we need to use this time constructively. But I think they're kind of really sort of putting the impetus on us. We do need to do more than what we're doing. But the reality is that we've got until the 31st of October to make some form of decision. Could they legally extend it again after that? Of course, like we've seen already, they can legally extend again. They would have to go back to the EU. The EU would then decide. I do feel that if they did that, if we can't make a decision by the 31st of October, then we asked to extend again, I feel that they would pretty much hammer us in regards to two things. First of all, they would demand a very long extension, not the sort of 3 month, 6 month side of things. But I also feel that it would cost us monetary side as well. They would ask us to pay a lot more money for such an extension. Theresa May, during that time, has already said, both directly and indirectly, that she feels that there's still time to get her deal pressed and passed in Parliament. What I feel with that is that she's looking more to wear people down, in the sense that it's my way or we remain. That obviously infuriates a lot of what they call Brexiteer MPs, and a lot of those Brexiteers have then started to move over and back her deal, not because they think it's a good deal, but because they think that actually if we don't pass this deal, then we're going to just remain in the union for indefinitely. So I think she's trying to wear people down that way. My gut feeling, though, is that a lot of people are now saying, look, this is a terrible deal. We're actually, ironically, better off to remain. So I personally, I don't think her deal is going to be passed. But of course, it's been a roller coaster, so we'll wait and see. If her deal fails to get through before then, we are due to take part on the European elections on May the 23rd. Now, this is pretty important. This is going to give us a bit of an indication over how the nation is feeling. So for those of you that are unaware and who are outside of the UK, there's a particular gentleman, Nigel Farage. He has set up a new party, Brexit party. So he was the former leader of UKIP. UKIP has kind of gone a bit awry. They've gone quite right wing. Their leader isn't as respected as Nigel Farage is. So Nigel Farage has set up a new party, a Brexit party. They're due to fight the European elections. And according to polls over the weekend, they're due to have a very big increase, or a very big win in regards to the European elections. And if that happens again, then the Parliament may have to rethink on their strategy. But that's the situation that we're in at the moment. So on the 23rd of May, we're set to take part in the European elections. If we don't hold elections, then it's mentioned that the UK crashes out with a deal on June the 1st. But everyone in the UK who votes has had their polling card through last week. At the end of last week, I believe Saturday, they were put through letterboxes. So as of today, you're pretty much assured that you'll have your polling card on your doormat. So the 23rd is the date in terms of holding elections. So the likely outcome, well, there's been talk over the weekend as well in regards to grassroots of Theresa May will resign. I personally don't think that she will resign. She's been adamant from the beginning that she wants to see this Brexit through, and she wants to see leaving through. I believe she feels it's her legacy to see this through, regardless of what people think of her. She feels that her legacy is to see Brexit through. The issue is that if her deal doesn't get voted through, there's talk of two things. First of all, grassroots members trying to oust her. But they did have a vote of no confidence at the end of last year. Now, legally, once someone has survived a vote of no confidence within the Tory party, they have to wait another 12 months. However, the chairman of the 1922 committee, which is Sir Graham Brady, has said that he may change that legislation to 6 months. So what that might mean is over the next couple of months, we may see another challenge to her leadership. We're starting to see a bit of momentum in regards to that. So potentially that's something that's in the pipeline. They could have another full referendum to take place on Brexit, certain options to be decided. I personally don't think this will happen. I don't think we'll see the country going back to the polls in regards to whether we leave the European Union or not. I think that's already been decided. How we leave the European Union could go back to the polls, but I don't see that a vote saying should we now remain. I don't see that personally happening. And a possible general election, and again, I think that's even less of a chance of that than actually having another referendum. I think that potentially it's going to be Theresa May in some way, shape or form leaves or gets ousted, and then a new leader takes up the reins. I feel that that is probably the most likely. And the cancellation of Brexit altogether. Again, it's there, it's on the table, but I don't foresee that happening. So how's it affecting the UK? Well, is it shown in our economy so far? I believe from what we've seen is that actually it's affecting more the European economy. So we actually import a lot of goods from the European Union, and they're actually being affected by a lot of the companies that I speak to, deal with, and our company is a member of the FSB, the Federation of Small Business Association. They're finding that actually a lot of companies, especially if you take, for example, manufacturing companies, they're actually looking and creating new links and new relationships with people within the UK. So, for example, we deal with a kitchen manufacturer who typically bought a lot of their furniture in from outside of the UK. Now they're saying, well, do you know what? We need to Brexit proof this. So we're buying a lot of furniture within the UK and manufacturing it within the UK. So it's actually causing the economy to have a bit of an upturn and strengthen a little bit. The people that are being affected are Germany. Germany announced over the weekend or just before that they've had a bit of a downturn and they've decreased expectations. However, we've got full-time, pretty much near all-time employment. Our economy is growing at roughly about 1.5% per annum since the growth. And we had a lot of negative news from the MPs, those who voted for Remain or those who tried to cajole their voters into Remain. They said that they would have to have emergency budgets, the economy would fall, unemployment would rise, and actually that hasn't happened. Economy is still growing. Employment is near an all-time high since the 70s, actually. So there's a lot of positivity coming out of the economy. However, is it still affecting us? Yes, there is certainly an underlying current that people need to make decisions. But also a lot of people are now saying, well, look, do you know what? Regardless of what happens, we leave, we stay. It doesn't matter. We need to crack on. And people are doing that. Incomes are also on the rise, despite the cost of living having risen sharply. Incomes are on the rise. But importantly, our role and how it affects house prices is we've seen that house price growth is at the lowest it's been for almost 6 years. Now, a lot of people take that in terms of a big negativity. And what we have to look at is how that's judged and how that's valued. Well, actually, if you take certain areas, house prices are still increasing dramatically. If you take areas like the northeast, the northwest, Birmingham, certain places in the Midlands, Scotland, Edinburgh, those places are still dramatically increasing. What is weighing on sentiment and what is weighing on the overall growth is London. London has had a terrible 18 months because of that, and because of the way London's weighted, and a lot of the bulk of our properties, in terms of the worth of our properties, are concentrated in cities, especially like London. That weighs on sentiment and that weighs on growth. So, despite the fact that we have had our lowest growth as a nation, we are still growing. That's one thing to take into consideration. But also, if you go outside of London, if you took London out of the equation, we would actually see some dramatic rises that's still increasing, such as Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester, Sheffield, Edinburgh, Newcastle, Birmingham. Those kind of cities are still growing dramatically. And as I say, much of the slowdown, it can't be blamed on Brexit anyway. If you took Brexit out of the equation, I still think we would still be in the same boat. The reason being is we've been having a bull market in regards to the property since pretty much 2010, 2011. So you can't keep going up. Brexit or no Brexit, it has to sort of slow down. Then there's a mini correction, and then up we go again. History will just keep repeating itself. What we obviously are looking to avoid, and what banks are looking to avoid, and the way that they do this is they put more regulation on things like mortgages. They simply look to avoid this because they don't want another 2008, 2009 crisis. So I don't think that will happen again. I do think we will have a mini correction. And I think probably sort of 2021, 2022, that will take place. And then we'll sort of start again. Prices are still being driven higher. They push the boundaries of affordability levels in certain parts of the country. And that then makes them rental markets. So they call them now generation rent. Because they're being outpriced, they're now open to the fact that they're going to be long-term renters. Now that's great for landlords, and that's again pushes up prices because landlords in the area are making more than they did previously. So in areas such as Manchester, again, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool, Sheffield, those kind of places are still increasing dramatically and still have extremely high demand. How does it affect the currency? Well, again, a lot of places in the UK, especially property, a weaker pound is fantastic. So it's great for people that are purchasing from the UK. So any exports or any property purchases, it makes it fantastic for overseas buyers. So whereas overseas buyers, before Brexit would pay a certain amount, they've saved literally 15, 20% overnight due to Brexit. So it's a phenomenal result for them. Where it does, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, where it does impact them is on the imports. It makes imports more expensive. Therefore, it's likely that we import less. We import less means that countries that we import from have a downturn in their economy. 39.5 million visitors to the UK in 17, spent 24.5 billion. And this has led to investors from abroad snapping up property in certain parts of the country. So the big question is, should you wait? Now, this is a tough one. What we say to everyone is, if you are looking at London and your sole interest is in London, you wait. Brexit, no Brexit, it wouldn't make a difference to us. You wait. The simple reason being is we feel another couple of years, that will be the time to get involved in London. However, what we say to people is, how do you choose the right investment? Well, that should not come down to specific location specific. That should be where is best to invest in regards to your return. If your return is better in London, you invest in London. If your return is better in Manchester, you invest in Manchester. It's as simple as that. So you wouldn't put, if you had 3 different bank accounts, one offered you 3%, one offered you 5%, and one offered you 10%, you wouldn't choose the 3, you would choose the 10. It's that straightforward. If you had that option with your banks, whether you had three banks that are offering you those kind of rates, you would put your money where the highest rate of return is. And it's the same. We have to look at property investment objectively, not emotionally. So if you take the emotion out, take out what you know about London, what you know about Manchester, what you know about the UK, invest where can make you the best return. It's that simple. What return should you expect? Again, if you're looking at returns of 4, 5, 6% net in places like Liverpool or Manchester, or 2 or 3% in London, well, again, you go with places like Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, those places that can get you the higher return. We're not saying that you always stick to Manchester or Liverpool or Leeds. Down the line, you may wish to sell, then start to invest in London where the returns start to tick up. There's plenty of opportunities. In regards to the when, well, look, if property prices are still increasing, what you have to judge it on is where your money is now. It's that simple. What is your money doing now? And only you can answer this. So if your money is making a certain percentage now, in terms of if it's in the bank, it's making you a certain percentage in your savings rates. If it's in stocks and shares, it's making you a certain percentage in terms of dividends and growth. Accumulate that over a year and work out what your money is doing now. Then you matter of factly say, could I be doing something else with that money? Could I invest it into property? And will I make more money in property? If the answer is no, then we go back to the question, when should I buy? Well, the answer is not now. If the answer is yes, I can make more money by taking it out of the bank and investing it in another property right now as we speak, then the answer going back to when should I buy? Well, that's yes, you should. So if you're making 2% in the bank in a bond, or 0.5% in your savings account, and you could go and get 6% in a property, the answer is should you buy? Yes. You're never going to get in at the bottom and then get in or get out at the top. It doesn't happen. So, but all you have to logically say is, can I make more on my money than I'm making today in the location that it is in? Banks, savings rates, bonds, shares, ISAs, wherever it is. If the answer is yes, you can make more money, the simple answer to that question, when should I buy, is immediately. In regards to where, that comes down to you. That's what we always say, is it's not one size fits all. We are very intent on getting you a tailored option, a bespoke option. You will find you will never phone us up and before asking you questions, we'll recommend something. We won't recommend anything until we find out about you, what you're looking for, when how long you're looking to hold this for. Are you doing it for pension, children's university funds, grandchildren, whatever it may be? We find out that prior to knowing where you should buy. So if you're looking at a 10-year plan, that you may have options in places like Liverpool, where they have the Liverpool Waters regeneration scheme. If you're looking for a 2 or 3 year plan, we would say, well, maybe you want to go for a short term let's in Manchester, where you're going to generate more income. So there's different opportunities and different options for different clientele. Again, in regards to waiting, like we said, there may well be a bit of Brexit relief rally this summer, according to the property experts in Rightmove. Many have said that although we're not anticipating a surge, we might be on a bit of a wave of relief, because what some people are doing is prices in certain areas have been static. Mortgages, fixed rate mortgages, are still very cheap due to the low interest rate. People are saying, well, do you know what, Brexit or no Brexit, we need to make a decision. And it always goes back to the same question: can I make more money than I'm currently making where it currently is? Rightmove said asking price on its website jumped again on average about 1.1%. And it said actually the Brexit delay is likely to boost confidence in the market. So they feel that there's going to be an upturn over the summer. Again, with Brexit or no Brexit, it's short term. Brexit is something that is short term. We will always talk about Brexit and look back on Brexit, but the reality is, at one point in time, it will be over. So it's now down to everyone say, do you know what? The fact that that's going to be over means that if I invest over a longer term investment, it's not going to matter. It's not going to impact me. Again, if you're waiting short term to get another big crash or a big dip, forget it. It's not going to happen. You could be waiting years for that to happen. So to get in at the bottom and out of the top isn't going to happen. Remember, property investment, like we say, is long-term investment and is cyclical. If you're not looking at this for a minimum of 5 years, we would probably advise not to do it. For us, property is a medium to long-term, a long-term avenue. If you set your parameters and the property hits them, so if you're saying, well, actually, I'm only making 0.5% in the bank, I need a minimum of 4%, and the property market hits that, then you buy. It's as simple as that. As long as we can get what you need to achieve, then buy. If you wait, you may get the property cheaper. We're not saying that you cannot get 3, 4, 5 grand, or even 5, 6, 7, 8% off the property. Potentially you can. However, it could also go up 3, 4, 5,000 or 5, 6%. So you may get it a little cheaper. You may cost yourself a lot of money. But the reality is that, like we said, you're not going to get in at the bottom and out of the top. And also delaying the process. You may say, well, do you know what? By delaying it a year, I've saved £10,000. You may well have done that. But also, by delaying it a year, you cost yourself £10,000 in regards to growth. Revenue, sorry, my apologies, revenue. So you may save £10,000, but also have you cost yourself £10,000 in regards to the revenue that you would have been getting. So actually, it becomes a false economy. Now, over to you guys. I've seen a number of questions tick through already. So you should have a little speech bubble on the side of your screen. So any questions, just ask. So the first question here is, why is London weighing on sentiment? Okay, so the way that the property market is weighed up is in terms of the total cost. So for example, the property in London is more expensive. There's more property in London. So if London gets dragged down 1%, for example, it affects the whole property market far more dramatically than if a small town gets dragged down 1%. However, if you take London out of the equation, you will still find that property markets performed reasonably well, and probably much better than stocks, shares, ISAs, savings rates over the last couple of years or so. In fact, if you take certain cities, those Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, they actually increased more in 2018 than they did in 2017. And that's despite all we've had with Brexit. So those cities, for me, are the resilient ones. Next question. Could Brexit take even longer than October the 31st? It could do. As I say, it could do. And how would that impact it? Well, like we say, people are, the kind of general consensus is people are getting fed up, regardless of how they voted, whether it was Leave or Remain. People are getting fed up in regards to the lack of clarity. So they're just cracking on with their lives. Even if Brexit takes place, there's a saying here, the sun still is going to rise and set. It doesn't make a difference. Everyone will still carry on and plod on. And the reality is, Brexit, we feel, will happen. But it is just a case of, carrying on with your lives and getting involved and making sure that, as I say, it always goes back to the same question. Can you make more in the property market now than you can where your money is now? The answer is yes, you invest. Next question. What happens if we get a no deal, because there's been warnings of the property market could fall 30%? How would this affect property prices? Well, actually, that's a bit of a myth in regards to that 30% figure. What that actually was is Mark Carney, the head of the Bank of England, he actually stated that what the worst case scenario is. Now, the Bank of England do this on a regular occurrence. They always state what the worst case scenario is if there was no interaction. What he then said, which wasn't picked up on or which wasn't reported, was that he actually said this won't happen. He turned around and said, no, it won't happen because we will step in and we will implement certain things so that it doesn't fall 30%. However, that wasn't picked up on. He then also stated that Brexit could enable the UK to be the leader of the free world market. So again, all of these things aren't picked up on, but it's always, negative news sells better, doesn't it? Let's be realistic. Could it fall with a no-deal Brexit? It could. Would that mean that people still need to rent? Yes. Would you still be generating revenue? Yes. Could it fall on anything? Of course it could. But what we say, there are three fundamentals in the property market, which is why the property market rises or falls. The first is legislation. The second is mortgage rates. And the third is taxation. So if legislation means that there's certain restrictions on purchasing property, that changes the market. If mortgage rates increase dramatically, then of course that puts a dampener on things, and people start to either stick with what they've got, or they start to actually get into negative equity if their mortgage rates are simply too high and the property prices are falling. And the last thing is taxation. If taxation's put on where, let's say that they trebled stamp duty or things like that, that would put people off of buying. So those things affect the property market. And actually, none of those fundamentals have changed. Legislation's changed slightly for buy-to-let, we know that, but mortgage rates are still at an all-time low. And okay, they've added stamp duty for second homes, but actually that's the only taxation that's changed. Everything else has remained pretty much static. And that's why the property market has still ploughed on. Next question. Why do you think the northern cities are Brexit proof? Well, this is more to do with the fact that London is a very metropolitan city. A lot of restaurants in London have closed because a lot of overseas and foreign nationals have actually left. and they said that they don't like the uncertainty, therefore they're not working here. Whereas places like Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, they're not relying on that particular sector or those particular sectors. So we feel that there is more strength in those particular areas, and especially if you buy short-term lets. If you get short-term lets and you're buying in certain areas close to either places like Media City or close to places like in Liverpool, close to the river and the Echo Arena, you're going to have great times, and there's potential to earn sort of like 8, 9, 10%. If you're investing now, where would you buy? Okay, again, that depends on you, depends on your finances. I wouldn't be investing in London. If someone said, right, you know what, I've got £1 million and I can invest anywhere in the UK, I still wouldn't buy London. The barrier as well is, don't forget, if you buy 2 properties in London for £500,000, you're paying stamp duty on £500,000 each. That's a lot of stamp duty. If you bought 4 or 5 properties in Liverpool or Manchester, for example, then you're paying less stamp duty. That's a dramatic saving in stamp duty. That could actually, be your first year's rent that you're paying in stamp duty. So where would I buy? I would still head to the northern cities, because there, in terms of the next question, actually someone says, what percentage should I be aiming for? Because in those northern cities, you can still aim for a minimum of 4-5% net minimum, and that's on a traditional rent. However, what we're finding out is that we can do short-term lets, and we can actually still get in the region of 8, 9, and 10% net on short-term lets. Now that's using something called Skylet. So as I say, feel free to look at our website, and you'll see Skylet, and you'll basically see what we can actually do for you guys in regards to Skylet, and the fact that we can rent out your properties on a short-term basis, buy that 1, 2, 3 nights, and we feel that we can make much more than we would in regards to what you would on a traditional short hold tenancy. All right, guys. Well, look, I hope that helps. A lot of people are saying that there's still an unknown, and Brexit is still an unknown. We can't give you any categorical answers. What I can say is that, to summarise, is that I don't feel that there's going to be a second referendum. I don't feel Brexit's going to be cancelled. I do feel that we will leave on the 31st of October or before. I do feel that Theresa May will have made at least an announcement in terms of when she is leaving, and if she hasn't been ousted prior. And I do feel the property prices will still keep increasing, and I do feel that the property is still the best place to put your money. So again, it comes back to you to say, where's my money now? The main question is, where's my money now? How much is it making? And can I make more in property? If the answer is yes, then it's worth going for. Well, I hope that helps, guys. And anything you need, call in anytime. Email me, Christopher.whetstone. That's WHETSTONE. So it's Christopher.whetstone@flambarwilliams.co.uk. And I'll answer any questions that you have. Take care.